shocking, but also not so shocking address from President Trump at the White House tonight about election fraud and Chinese election interference in the 2020 presidential election. I mean, look, some of this information is new, but I think that a lot of this is information that we, the American people, already knew, but we were gaslit and we were banned and we were silenced for talking about on social media. Everybody knows that the election was stolen in 2020, and it was largely due to Chinese election interference. Hello, COVID-19, anybody? A bioweapon from China unleashed on the American people? 1.2 million American citizens murdered by the Chinese people? So we know what China did. And when people said, oh, what a coincidence that this virus from China is being unleashed on our country, right before the 2020 presidential election year. Oh, what a coincidence that, this virus was unleashed and now they don't want anybody going and voting in person. They want everybody voting by mail. Remember how you were forced to vote by mail depending on where you lived? I ran for Congress in Palm Beach County in 2020. And I couldn't even knock on doors. I didn't have social media. I had no access to social media because all the big tech social media companies banned me. And then the only way that people were able to vote in some areas because, well, they had everybody believing and convinced that you would die if you contracted COVID-19. And if you didn't get the vaccine, you couldn't go out in public and you had to wear a mask everywhere. That is how they were able to exploit the mail-in ballots and really just this enormous amount of mail-in ballot fraud that we saw. President Trump alluded to what the scenes that we all saw in the aftermath of the 2020 election across various swing states, where it took them over a month, right? Over a month to count the ballots. And they were, putting up boards on all the windows. And if you're just joining us now, President Trump just released this very explosive statement, and they're declassifying documents that have been reviewed by our intel agencies, the CIA and the FBI, proving that the CCP, China interfered in the 2020 election. He said that China carried out a compromised data operation by acquiring over 220 million voter files. And so really, when you think about that, it's quite fascinating, because look at the population of the United States, right? Under 400 million people. And China was able to acquire 220 million American voter files. Not just the voter files. President Trump said in his address tonight that the Chinese were able to obtain phone numbers, addresses, other personal sensitive information like voter affiliation. Now, what do you think the Chinese are going to do if they have access to 220 million American voter files? That data could be used to hack people. That data can be used to impersonate people. And that's exactly what the Chinese did. According to President Trump, they have evidence of the Chinese manufacturing ballots, paying American journalists, he said tonight, to write negative news stories about him, to convince people that he wasn't fit for office and that he shouldn't be president, because they didn't want somebody who was actually strong, who was capable of leading our military. And he said they didn't want somebody who was actually going to be prosperous, which is why the Chinese were rooting for Joe Biden.